I am so grateful, I just have to say, for every part that every ministry and service has here. For every person that has overcome, it stands up for the people who haven't. Because it has changed my life. I grew up in a home that there was a lot of fear, anger, and I began to be sexually abused at a very young age. And the people that I was to trust for protection and provision were the ones that I was most scared of. At about the age of 5, when the abuse started happening, I remember distinctly starting to dress in my older brother's clothes, thinking that if I looked like a boy, the attention would stop. And it really confused things for me. I went through my childhood very awkward, feeling very alone. I always had a lot of life in me, but it was stunted by insecurity. But I always had a distinct feeling in my heart that the way things were, they weren't supposed to be that way. And I still was very sensitive and very loving, and I just desperately wanted to connect with other people, but I didn't know how. I didn't realize the damage and the destruction of the abuse I went through until later into my adulthood. I had no clue that the wounds that were created in those early years would follow me into my latter. I'm 42, almost. I turned 42 in July. I know, you know what? The 40s, I love them. Super easy so far. It's like, I love being in my 40s. It's totally different. I don't know what it is, but. When I was 16, I had a suicide attempt. I was an alcoholic. I was drinking every morning. I was still in the 9th grade, 10th grade. I remember being in the psychiatric unit and feeling safe for the first time. And I went to great lengths to keep myself in there. And I want to say that my parents were very loving, and I love them very much. But when you've been hurt, you have no idea how much you're hurting or how much that hurt comes out and affects others until you seek to be healed. And unfortunately, for many people, they never get that chance to heal. At 16, I had my first girlfriend. I went through several drug and alcohol treatments, psychiatric wards that followed me through my 20s. When I was 27, I ended up in jail from a serious heroin and meth overdose and addiction. And I had my first encounter with Jesus Christ. That led me into a ministry, a church ministry in Phoenix, where I served, but I never attained to know why I felt the way I did or understand why I behaved how I had. 3 years after my initial relationship with the Lord started, I got married to a man. And because I wasn't healed, that marriage was a disaster for both of us. I often would seek to be accepted and loved, but as soon as it would happen for me, I would reject it and reject the person and then actually resent them when they would leave. 3 years into my marriage, my husband started using drugs, and I started seeing a woman again, and I left him, our ministry, our life, my career, my dogs, to come back to Minnesota to be with the same woman I was with when I was 16. I began relapsing and using drugs, and I was back into heroin and meth. and because she was with me, she began using that also. 2 years ago, my estranged husband died due to his drug addiction. 6 months after he passed, my girlfriend died due to hers. And in between the two, I lost both my parents, whom we were living in their basement. So my whole life had crumbled, and I found myself sitting in my dad's house, and it had been broken into, stuff had been stolen. It was in the middle of winter, and I was so empty, I didn't even think to call out to God. But he still heard the prayer in my heart. I ended up having a heroin overdose that landed me in the Mayo Clinic with an infection in my heart, around my heart, in my blood, and that's where I knew that finally things could be different for me. From there, I went into Teen Challenge, I went into drug treatment, and from that initial step, I was able to surrender my heart to the Lord once again, because I acknowledged my sin. I acknowledged my heart had been chasing after something that didn't even belong to me. A year ago, I came across paths with Jean Risberger, and I heard of Living Waters. I went through Living Waters, and it absolutely changed my life. So I never knew how to go to God with my pain. I didn't even know how to define it. But through Living Waters, I was able to actually acknowledge and articulate what I had been trapped in. And coming out of being numb from a 7-year relapse and from losing my entire family, it was in those moments where God, he had my heart literally in his hands as he just slowly clipped away the barbed wire that I was caught up in. It was through confession and the intimate sessions with my small group that I learned how to walk with other people through pain and healing. And the things that used to drive me before, the things that used to own me, they don't own me. The things that used to own me, I took ownership of, and they lost their power. It is the presence of Jesus Christ through the power of his Holy Spirit that will set us free, and only that will unleash the healing that we desperately need in our hearts and in our minds, because it is an inward thing that will follow and change the atmosphere around us. It is unhealed pain that creates itself, that regenerates itself. And I am just really thankful that there is hope, there is a way out, and there's a way to stay out. And I am very grateful to be here, and I thank you all.